ask the questions that you want to do something with or something in response to.
Mhm.
Um, but getting other people's perspective is a big deal. Getting their insight, their opinions, regardless if they're a 30-year plus vet or the ink is still wet on their license. Everybody has a unique perspective. They have a different background, upbringing. They see things through a different set of eyes than you do.
Talk about today. And just, truthfully, in my talks with Nathan over the last several weeks and getting ready for this, I've said to him a couple of times, Nathan, just say everything you've said in about 15 minutes. Thank you guys and ladies for joining. We do this because it's our passion. And I've said this before, I would do this for free, and I am doing this for free, nothing I'm getting paid for it. But it is something I'm very passionate about, as well as others on here as well. Just remember, the most important person you'll ever lead is yourself. So thank you for joining. Make a quick introduction of our speaker, Nathan Sweet. Nathan had no ambitions of ever getting in EMS. Many of us have stories where, we might have come from an EMS family where we grew up watching Emergency, or some inspiration, led us here. But Nathan was right the opposite. He had no ambitions of ever getting in EMS. Nathan didn't watch the Emergency show. We'll allow him to be okay with that. But Nathan he grew up in a military family, and he joined the Air Force. And when he graduated from boot camp, he really didn't have a career path at that point in time in the Air Force. So they told him, you're going to be a firefighter. And that's what started his path to where he's at today. And he went to firefighting school. And then in 1999, he went to EMT school, and he knew he wanted to be a paramedic. He moved to Tennessee. And so we're trying to dress him in orange, but he still likes his Michigan colors. We'll forgive him for that. But anyway, he moved to Tennessee, got hired at Gatlinburg Fire Department, and then shortly after, in 2002, went to work at Anderson County. And he just wanted to be involved with the organization and try to make a difference. And that's certainly something he's definitely done. And in 2002, he went to paramedic school. And then in 2009, 7 years after going to Anderson County EMS there, he became the director in chief of Anderson County, followed by our previous speaker from last week, as you guys know, Robert Byrd. Nathan has served 15 years at Anderson County, and I've picked up a lot of quotes in our conversations with Nathan. I'm going to try to share a couple of them, but one of the things that Nathan said in our conversation, and I'm going to share, is he says, there's nothing unique about me. It just boils down to having the right motivation and having good work ethics. And I got to tell you, that's absolutely a great quote that I wanted to share. And hopefully everybody can take something away from that, as well as many other things that we're going to talk about today. Nathan, thank you for being here. We're excited to hear so many things that you have to offer. Let's just start with here. You and I were talking, and in our conversation, we just having, some prep talks, and you said, at one point I asked my staff two questions. What would it cause you to leave? And what would cause you to stay? And I got to tell you, those are questions that every single leader should be asking their staff right there. What would it cause you to leave, and what would cause you to stay? Because that's the hardcore truth right there. And that's where you can make a difference, and
Yeah.
in so many ways. So I'll just shut up right now and let
Yeah.
you take it from there. But tell us about that time when you asked that question, and what was some of the outcomes?
So again, thank you all for allowing me to come on and talk with everyone this morning. It was a number of years ago, and I try to have what we call Wednesday meetings. I try to have those throughout the year, where on a Wednesday, 4 consecutive Wednesdays, because we have 4 shifts, we'll bring the on-duty crews on. We'll bring them up, and we'll have a conversation. And we'll let them know what the conversation is going to be in advance, what the topic of conversation is going to be, and it's all over the map of what that is. But in this particular time, I asked that question. Basically, it's the same question asked two different ways. What would cause you to say? What would cause you to leave? So obviously, the key thing is asking that question. Obviously, on the internal side for me is knowing that probably the answers are going to hurt. to a certain extent. If you care about your organization, the answers you're going to hear quite possibly are going to hurt. The other key important thing is once you ask those questions, you shut up. You stop talking and you listen and you actively listen. And I just wrote notes. Everything was spitting out. Everybody was saying, I was just writing it down and just listening to what they had to say. Maybe having some, hey, tell me a little bit more about that or clarify that for me a little bit more or help me understand it. And again, just wrote and I wrote and wrote and wrote. We did all concluded the Wednesday meetings, got all the feedback, and then I really just meditated on what I wrote, what I had, what they said, chewed on it, and took that back and really came up with three really overarching, resonating things that were mentioned. The first and foremost is the staff wants to be valued. They want to be valued by me personally. They want to be valued by the organization, by the community. There's a lot to unpack on that, but they want to be valued. They want to know that they're not just a number, they're not just a pulse and a patch, that they matter and what they do matters. And they want to feel that. And so that's dynamic in itself, right? Because not everybody's wired the same. So how do you express value to such a broad group of people, and at the same time it's maybe not the way I'm wired that I feel valued. So you have to step outside of a comfort zone to figure out, how do I engage that person, how do I add value to that person, how do I let them know that they matter. But they want that, they want to feel valued, they really do. The second one for our organization is they want to be challenged. Now, there's plenty of people I've come across in my career, both military and civilian, that did not want to be challenged. They want to punch a clock, they come in and they go out and just want to be left alone. But for our organization, we identified we want to be challenged, we want to grow, we want to develop, we want to know what the next step is, we want to know how can we get better, how can we provide more, how can we be a greater benefit to the community. And they want a roadmap. They want to basically lay it out there and say, this is what you do if you want to be better. This is what it's going to take. And they want to be challenged like that. And the third is they wanted stability. They wanted to know that they weren't walking on eggshells. That their job was going to be there tomorrow and the next day. That they have an investment that is going to be made in them. They wanted that stability and not have to be concerned, scared, or worried or anxious that something's going to happen to their job. So those things have become such a heartbeat for me, to know that the staff, and I've heard that everywhere I've gone around, and I've heard other people talk about other organizations inside and outside of EMS. I constantly hear that resonate, and ultimately we brought that to the organization and started developing it. And this is where it defies the laws of physics, because physics says that it's harder to get things going than to keep it in motion. But with people, I think it's easier to start things, it's harder to keep it going. So
Mhm.
it is something that you have to constantly work on, and you have to constantly check. Are we doing it? Are we measuring up? Are we emphasizing these things? Are we making sure that we're communicating the right way? And we get distracted with all sorts of life. But that was such an incredible and I've had several Wednesday meetings like that, but that one in itself has just altered my leadership as for this organization, my leadership as a whole, to make sure that we're emphasizing those things and be kind of, when we start talking about new things and adding new things and developing new things, how does that measure up with value, challenge, and stability? Does it add to it? Does it distract from it? Does it make it worse? I mean, all those things. Has become, especially for me, it's become personal.
Man, that is fantastic, Nathan. Thank you for sharing that. I try to take some notes, even though you and I have talked about this very thing, a couple of times already, but just kind of recapping for the folks that maybe joined a little bit late, and just for everybody, if you're trying to capture some of these notes. I took away some key points here from what you said here. Is the answers are going to hurt, and that's okay. As leaders, we have to be able to understand and be okay with, when we ask questions, they might hurt, but that's what we do. If you're a leader, you should be passionate about that, and you should be passionate about your people. And in many of our conversations, Nathan, you and I've had, and I've said this the other day, I said, I think I can sum up a lot of things that you talked about. Servant leadership. I mean, and that's being able to serve your people and understanding that some of the things may hurt, but that's okay. The next thing I picked up on there is stop talking and listen. I mean,
Yeah.
how hard is that? That's difficult for us as leaders sometimes to do. So, stop talking and listen. Meditate on it. I mean, that's reflection. We've got to do that to be able to just meditate and then come back with the right plans. And then the next thing you mentioned, the staff want to be valued, that they matter,
Yeah.
and that is very true there as well. They want to be challenged. They want a roadmap, and again, another great point, and instability. So thank you for sharing that in our talks, Nathan. Like I said, I picked up on so many great things that you talk about. You made another quote, and I'll share it with the group here. It goes right along with this. You said, at some point, if you ask questions, you'd better answer them. Yeah, or they'll quit answering questions, and that's spot on. That's 110% truth right there. So thank you for sharing that. Another thing that you picked up on, and you kind of talked about it, if you don't mind expanding on it a little bit, you embrace everyone's perspectives.
Yeah.
You talked about, new hires, experienced, EMTs and paramedics or not experienced. And, you know, if you don't mind, share with us just a little bit about, how you embrace everyone's perspectives when somebody new comes to your service or if it's a student. Share with us about that.
Yeah, so it kind of you talked about that people are going to answer your questions. You got to do something with it, or they'll stop asking, or they'll stop answering your questions. So you need to be very calculated on what questions you ask. Ask the questions that you want to do something with or something in response to. Um,
Mhm.
but getting other people's perspective is a big deal. Getting their insight, their opinions, regardless if they're a 30-year plus vet or the ink is still wet on their license. Everybody has a unique perspective. They have a different background, upbringing. They see things through a different set of eyes than you do. And being able to try and have those conversations and try to find out from people, what are you seeing? And find those people that are willing to share that. I've got, unfortunately, I think this group is too small, but I've got a group of staff that have no problem, although very respectfully, will unfiltered give me responses on what sucks and what doesn't. And I love that. I do appreciate that. It helps me in a decision maker to what direction are we going in? What are the people saying? Why are they saying it? All those things, what are their motives? I mean, it is task focused, right? You've got to make sure that you are listening, actively listening, and what is really being said. But people's perspective are just different, and being able to have that and to see it from their point of view is it really is beneficial because the greatest idea may come from the newest person or the longest serving person, and quite possibly most of the time won't come from you. So I'm all about trying to, okay, what's the best way of doing things? And I don't care who it comes from. I really don't. If it's the best way, it's the best way. But if those are kept quiet, if people don't share those for whatever reason, they got burned the last time they shared them, and be able to have those conversations. Hey, I hear the idea you have, but we're not going to act on it right now, and here's why. Being able to have those conversations, there's very little that are off limits in our organizations. Pretty much only the things that are legally off limits, like HIPAA, or things that you legally can't talk about. And I don't care to talk about people behind their back. So if you want to know for information about one of your coworkers, you go ask them yourself. That's not for me to tell. But other than that, ask away. That's a measure of accountability you should have in your organization. It's never because the boss said so. There needs to be a reason behind it, and if you can't explain it, then there's probably an issue with the reason or the decision that you made or somebody else made. But yeah, try to be open to that. Really, I mean, don't just discount people because well, we used to do it this way. Or okay, well, what did that look like? How would that look like today? Does it fit today? Does it not? I mean, give people ownership. They say, "Well, I'm interested in this idea." Okay, go out, research it, take a look at it. We'll set up a time. You and I sit down and talk about it. You give them the work to do that, help them develop and grow. But it could really end up adding to your organization. as opposed to remaining quiet and never hearing about it.
Yeah, well, spot on. I always say, and you said it as well, if you want the right answers, you got to ask the right questions, and then you got to be ready for the answer.
Sure.
And like you say, shut up and be, you mentioned be calculated on your questions that you ask. That's 100% truth right there. But again, you got to be ready to, like you said before, stop and listen and be ready to take notes or take it in. If it hurts, okay, where do we go from here and how do we make that better? Everybody's got a unique perspective. That is 100% truth there. Unfiltered responses. We as leaders should always welcome an open door policy to say, okay, come in here and sit down and tell me what your unfiltered response is, and let's be okay with it. But yet, like you said, let's go research it and find the solutions for it. Let's just don't hear it and throw it in the trash and be done with it. Let's find the solutions for it because that's how we build a better organization. Um, and it doesn't matter about age and experience. Everybody has something to add to the conversation or add to the organization. So thank you for that. Those are really good points there. And gosh, we're coming close to even the end of this call, and we haven't even got started yet, Nathan. Nathan, but that's okay. We'll definitely have to have you back on here again. But we do have a couple more questions. Hopefully, we can fit in here real quick before we ask folks. If you have questions, please put those in the chat. We'll definitely want to give you opportunity to get those answered. You can go ahead and start doing that now if you'd like. But Nathan, we talked about a lot of great things, and one of the things that we talked about is, what are some of your non-negotiables, and why? Why is that? Why are those your non-negotiables?
Yeah, so that really becomes, what do you define as value to yourself personally, and then how does that play out? So the part of it I already talked about was transparency,
Hmm.
being able to say, I'll talk about anything and everything, whatever you want to talk about, decision that we made, the policy we have in place. Let's have a conversation about that. Let's have a discussion about that. You know what? I'm never too busy, and I hear that the crews give me that uh, compliment, I guess you might say. I don't want to bother you with this because you're too busy, and I immediately respond back, I'm never too busy for you. That I'm never too busy. Don't put that on me. Don't, because if you feel like you need to reach out to me, you need to talk to me, or the assistant directors over operations or your supervisor. We're never too busy. Now the timing also obviously plays a role in that, but if you don't bring it to me, that's not on me. That's on you. So do not use that excuse on me. And then we just don't. I don't. There's no threats. I'm never going to threaten somebody with their job. You do this or you're fired. Absolutely not. That is not a negotiable. At the same time, I don't allow them to threaten me. If a crew member is going to come in and say, "Hey, I want this to happen," and say, "Well, here's why we didn't make that decision." Well, if this doesn't happen, I'm leaving. I literally take that as their resignation, and I thank them for their service, and I say, "Thank you very much," but that I'm not going to threaten them with their job. They shouldn't threaten me with their job. We should have that mutual respect for not just me as a person, but this organization as a whole. So those are some of the non-negotiables that I have, involved with our agency or the staff and how to relate with them. And again, I'm gonna love on them. I'm gonna treat them with respect. I'm not gonna belittle them. I'm not gonna berate them. I'm not gonna cuss them. I'm not gonna raise my voice at them. At the same time, I'm asking the same. Don't do that to me. Let's not. That's not going to get us to. If you want to vent about something, that's fine. That's different. Venting at me is a different situation. Venting about something, sure. I mean, you want to get colorful with words. I mean, that doesn't bother me. But let's have a conversation about it and let's discuss it.
Well, thank you for sharing. Never too busy for your folks. That's great feedback. No threats, transparency. I mean, that's the key right there on everything. And then I love what you just said in all of that. Those non-negotiables. You're never too busy. Don't hit me with threats and being transparent. But you wrapped it up there with saying, love on them and respect them. That's, as leaders, one of my favorite quotes of all time. If they don't know our heart, they sure is not going to give us their hand.
Sure.
And that's truth right there. Our people have to know that we care about them, or they're never going to follow. You're never going to rise to the pinnacle level of leadership, which was where you gain respect. If you don't care about them, regardless of what the situation is, you can.
Where you said, "Give them your heart, they'll give you your hand." But from my perspective, I'm gonna give you my heart regardless if you give me your hand.
Like
I
it.
don't love on you to get something back for me. I love on you because that's what I've been called to do. God loved me such an incredible way, and He's called me to love others. And regardless of what I get back, I may get hate back, I may get distrust back, I may get all kinds of different things. I may get love back. That's great. I love feeling that as well. But we're called to love them, to take care of them, to provide for them. To again, they matter. They matter. They have to matter. I mean, they're a human being just like I am. I'm not greater and I'm not less than they are, and they're not greater and less than I am. I mean, let's bring that back to that.
I love it. I love it. Well, we are at the time for questions. Please submit any questions you have. I do want to wrap up one thing here before we get into questions. I asked in our conversations, I ask Nathan a question. I'm gonna answer it for you, Nathan, if that's okay. Just for so we can get into the questions. Uh, I asked Nathan, I said, when the storm is strong, when the storm is strong and you feel like you're drowning, what keeps you anchored? And and ladies and gentlemen, Nathan's response was always go back to my why. And I think that Nathan has really summed up his why on this entire call. I mean, it's everything he said is his why. His people, servant leadership, serving the community, organization. He's called for this, and that's foundational right there. When the storm is strong and you feel like you're drowning, and what keeps you anchored, just remember your why. Remember, no matter what organization you're in, if you don't have that why, spend some time figuring that out because that's why you stay. All right, let's look here to see if we got some questions. It is now 7:25. Let me go to the chat room here and see what we got going on for questions. Let's see. All right. Any questions coming in here? Let's see, Eric, do you got any questions there?
Guess while you're looking at that, one
Yeah,
thing I guess also that for everybody to understand that I think there's a question: what do you do for self growth?
there you go.
So self growth, honestly, comes through application. You can read all the books, you can listen. No offense, Eric. You can listen to all the podcasts, but if you're not applying, if you're not going out and doing things, and you're going to fail, that's fine. We're not perfect, but for self growth, you've got to go out and try. You've got to just try. What it works, what doesn't work, what hurts, what doesn't hurt. What do you enjoy doing? What do you not enjoy doing? Trying to identify and what do you need to do and get outside that comfort zone. But I do read books, um, I, and that's a great to learn from. I have listened to podcasts, and it's great to look, but application is the biggest thing. You just got to try.
Yeah, that's spot on. Thanks for asking that question. Another question I see here coming in is what was some of the best and worst advice you received as a leader? That's a great question.
Yeah, so early on in my directorship, I was getting advice to stand my ground, something organization wide, actually to my boss, and basically say, you know what, boss, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna go in that direction. And it was a Sunday morning. My boss, the mayor, reached out and said, "Hey, I need you to come to my office this afternoon, and we're gonna have a conversation." So I called some other people that were not invested in the process. Said, "Hey, here's what's going on," and all three of them separately said, "Nathan, you're in the wrong. You had the opportunity to go to your boss and say, 'Hey, this is the direction I want to go in,' and your boss said, 'No, we're going to go in this direction.' You when you're meeting, you have that conversation, you have that disagreement. Once you come out of that meeting, you guys are on the same page. Again, as long as it's legal, ethical, all those things, you're on the same page. You're going to work towards the same goal, and you can't be in opposition." So I went to that meeting very humbled, apologized, and kept my job. Honestly, he said, "Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because if not, I wanted your resignation." Um, so that definitely was humbling, but really it was kind of eye opening that And for many of those that may not know, just because you're the director, you don't get to make all the decisions, and you don't get it your way. Quite often, you don't get it your way. You have a boss, but you also have a staff that hopefully the organization's set up that they can be involved with making some of those decisions. And quite honestly, it may go the opposite direction from what you want to go. So that was some of the best and worst. Uh, to stand your ground and know that you got to fight the right battles, but sometimes you may lose. But
Stand your ground. That's good. Well, it sounds like we're getting to the top of the hour here. I do have two comments that were posted here. One person said, "No question. Just want to thank Nathan for some great information and showing awesome motivation for EMS," and that is definitely true. I have another comment here. Actually, it comes to me via text from someone on the call. It says, "I know Nathan well and have watched from a distance for years, and now he lives that philosophy he speaks." So, hey, that's awesome right there. He really is an exceptional person and leader. So, thank you, Nathan, for sharing today. And like I said, we didn't even get into all the things we talked about, but I appreciate what you did share, and perhaps we'll have you on another time and we'll learn more about your hero, Captain America.
uh,
That's a great story. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Be sure to mark your calendars next month. I think it's June the 3rd. The first Friday of the month is, excuse me, no, June the 7th. Sorry about that. We will have Jeff Davis, who is actually joining us today. He will be our speaker next month. Jeff has got a lot of things to share with us, many, many years of experience in leadership. So I'm super excited about talking with him over the next couple of weeks and preparing for the June 7th leadership mentoring call. So please mark your calendars for that. Again, be sure and watch for the podcast from last month. It's coming out Tuesday. And also, if you haven't already joined the podcast, be sure and do so on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And just remember, as you're starting your day and your weekend, the most important person you'll ever lead is yourself. And that's what we're here for, is to help us all get through this thing called leadership each and every day. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Hope you have a great, fantastic Friday and a wonderful weekend. And I look forward to seeing you again on June the 7th. Thank y'all.